Convicted fraudster Hildegard Steenkamp returns to the dock this month. She's been convicted of 336 counts of fraud committed between 2004 and 2016. You remember Steenkamp diverted tax refunds meant for her employer, Medtronic, to her or her late husband. The accountant would have gotten away, but a tip-off blew the lid in 2017, 10 months after she had stopped. Sentencing proceedings began in August. eNCA reporter Hloni Mtimkulu looks back at some key moments.
Witnesses were called up as Hildegard Steenkamp's sentencing proceedings began in August. The prosecution introduced auditing firm Deloitte, who had been appointed by defrauded company Medtronic after receiving a tip-off about Steenkamp scamming. Magistrate Philip Venter heard how the accountant was able to get away with tax fraud to the tune of more than 500 million rand over 12 years.
So it's a complex matter, but I'll try and explain it in the simplest terms. I mean, effectively what happened was the accused was involved in processing of all of the VAT claims on behalf of the company. So the company had two entities. They would import large volumes and amounts of medical equipment into South Africa, and then they would on-sell it to the local company Medtronic Africa, and between the two that created an opportunity for the company to claim back input VAT on the imports. So in its most simplest form, they were able to reclaim money that they had paid to SARS. Effectively what happened here was the accused managed to set herself up as a beneficiary on the bank account of Medtronic, paying herself monies that purported to be either for customs clearing agents or for SARS itself.
Steenkamp's tenure at healthcare company Medtronic began as a junior employee in the middle of 2004. By December of the same year, it seemed enough trust had been put in her to be able to pull off this crime.
Certainly the early managers had obviously placed an amount of trust in the employee. Two, I think that the documents that were presented were voluminous and complex.
Steenkamp's reign of fraudulent terror began in December 2004 with an amount of just over 24,000 rand. According to her testimony, the first few transactions were used to test whether she and her now deceased husband would be caught. By the following month, the accountant was claiming back more than 100,000 rand per single transaction. As they got away with these claims, the amounts escalated, reaching 500,000 rand in September 2006 and 1 million rand in December of the following year. By the time the 336th transaction took place in December 2016, Steenkamp had moved to sometimes embezzling more than 6 million rand in a single transaction. Steenkamp's husband also died in December 2016 following a suicide attempt.
So the total amount that we uncovered was 336 transactions, and the total value was, and I'll round it to 537 million. No, Your Worship, it was not recovered. There was a process that was undertaken through the asset forfeiture unit to restrain the available assets at the time of the accused's arrest. And I think, if also memory serves me correctly, I think the total value at that stage was around 30 million that was recovered at that point in time. And that was in the form of assets. It wasn't in the form of cash specifically.
Meanwhile, Steenkamp explained that the fraud started because her then husband needed money for his business's operational costs. He encouraged her to swindle Medtronic after hearing of a form of a loophole to the tax refund process.
My ex-man het 'n kontrak by die staat verloor.
My ex-husband lost a contract with the state.
En hy het vir my gevra ek moet probeer ek geld in die hande kry.
He then requested me to try and get money in my hands.
She said her attempts to stop the transactions of a few months later were met with resistance by an abusive husband.
He already started with the assault from the year 1999, so it was continuous.
En toe ek vir hom sê ek wil dit nie meer doen nie, is ek geweldig aangerand daai spesifieke aand.
When I had informed him that I do not want to do this anymore, I was indeed assaulted that very evening.
En ek het daai selfde aand 'n oordose pille gedrink wat my in ICU laat beland het vir 5 dae.
And I did, on that very same evening, took an overdose of pills which landed me in ICU in hospital.
Steenkamp later retracted her statements that she had been acting under duress, saying she was solely responsible. She also said she would receive between 50,000 rand and 100,000 rand from her late husband to run the household. But the prosecution presented a picture of someone living it up with overseas trips, shopping sprees, multiple properties and businesses, and tens of millions of rand spent at casinos. Sentencing proceedings resume this month. Hloni Mtimkulu, Johannesburg.